Hello, my dear Year 7 students. I hope you're all safe and sound. I know you must be getting very bored in this quarantine. However, try and stay indoors as much as possible. It's a very hard time, I know, but inshallah it will pass very soon. Last time, our last lesson was about Ethiopia, and we were discovering the different countries that make up the Horn of Africa. And try and remember what were the four countries that make up Africa. They were Ethiopia, Somalia, Djibouti, and Eritrea. And so far we have covered Ethiopia, and today we shall cover Somalia. So, what is Somalia like? Somalia is the easternmost country on the Horn of Africa, and the word easternmost means that it's on the edge, on the eastern edge, or on the eastern corner of the African country. Easternmost meaning it's on the eastern edge. It extends from just south of the equator. Can you locate the equator in this map here? Well, here the equator is this line, and so you can see that Somalia extends from the north of the equator, and part of it, just a very small part of it, is below the equator. So it extends from just the south of the equator towards the north, and it reaches until the Gulf of Aden, and it occupies an important geopolitical position. Do not freak out. What is the meaning of geopolitical? Now, let's try to analyze the word. Geopolitical is apparently two words, which are geographical and political. So when we look at the location of Somalia on the map, we will find that it's on the easternmost edge of Africa, and it's located in an area that makes it close to the Arabia part, where we have Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, and so on, and it's also close to the southwestern part of Asia. So the geopolitical position is the geographical position and the political importance of this position, okay? So Somalia occupies an important geopolitical position between sub-Saharan Africa and the countries of Arabia and southwestern Asia. So one more time, what are the main points here? The main points are that Somalia is the easternmost country on the Horn of Africa. It extends from just the south of the equator towards the north, and it reaches until the Gulf of Aden, and it occupies an important geopolitical position. All right. The capital, as we said before, of Somalia is Mogadishu, and it's located north of the equator. Let's look one more time at the equator. Where is the equator? Here. And let's try and zoom in to see where Mogadishu is. Here is Mogadishu. It's the capital city, and it's above the equator, or it's north from the equator. Okay? So Mogadishu is located north of the equator on the Indian Ocean, and it is the most populous or the most populated city in Somalia. According to the UNICEF, there is around 5,000 homeless children within the city of Mogadishu, and this is one of the main problems that Somalia suffers from. It's poverty. So the poverty rates or the poverty levels in Somalia are very high. In many cases, the country sometimes is threatened by problems like famines and droughts, okay? Now, on this map, again, can you locate Mogadishu? Here. It overlooks the Indian Ocean, and it's north from the equator. Now let's talk about the landscape and the climate of Somalia, and just by logic, since we know the position of Somalia, how do you expect the landscape to be like? Now we have covered already the different biomes of Africa, and we covered the different physical features of Africa, and when we talked about the biomes, we said that the most area that we will find deserts and semi-deserts is towards the North African area, and we know that the Horn of Africa is located towards the northeastern region of Africa. So as we can deduce, how would the climate and the landscapes of Somalia be like? Definitely the climate is going to be very hot and very dry. Dry meaning that the country receives very little rainfall across the year. And remember when we said which area of the Horn of Africa is the most area that receives rainfall every year, we said it was Ethiopia, the Ethiopian highlands. So what kind of landscapes would you find? As you can see in these images, you will find thorn, bush, savanna, and semi-desert. This is an example of the semi-desert, and here are the savannas or the grassland with thorn bush savanna, okay? So the climate is definitely related to the landscape, and so if we have a semi-desert, then we definitely have very little rainfall across the year, and the weather is generally hot and there's extreme heat and wind. While we would find that the wettest areas or the areas that have the highest rainfall would be the savanna. Most of the country is extremely flat. What do we mean by flat? That it's not very hilly or mountainous. In fact, it has very few natural barriers. Natural barriers here we refer to hills and mountains and any kind of projections above the land, any kind of natural physical projections above the land. So we have few natural barriers in Somalia. And this way, the nomads, and what are the nomads? I want you to research this word on your own, and the next time we are going to discuss what nomads are. So the nomads, they can travel freely and they can travel with their livestock freely, their cattle and so on. So what is the most important feature about the landscape of Somalia is that it has thorn bush savanna and semi-desert, and it's also generally very flat with few natural barriers. What about the resources, the natural resources? By the way, in this area of the world, this region, it's very rich in natural resources due to its geography, due to its location. You will find that this area is actually very rich. The Horn of Africa is very rich in natural gas and in oil, which are the main sources of energy used worldwide. So this area of the world is very rich in natural resources like what? So far we said like natural gas, like oil, like uranium, iron ore here in this picture. This is an example of what iron ore looks like. Tin, bauxite, and copper. And here's an example of copper coin. This is in fact the coin of Somalia. And other natural resources like salt and, as we said, natural gas. So what are the main points to come out from this slide with? That Somalia has variety of untapped reserves of natural resources. What does untapped mean? Untapped means that they are natural to the point that there has not been any kind of human interference in this area. So there are many places yet in Somalia that are to be mined, for example, or to be discovered and so on. All right, so Somalia has untapped reserves of numerous natural resources. Now, it's important to mention some of these examples. You don't need to memorize all of them, but at least try to memorize most of them, like uranium, iron ore, tin, bauxite, copper, salt, and natural gas. Look at these two images and what can you try to deduce from these images? Well, here, apparently this looks like armed, since they have weapons and so on, so they are armed and they look like they are in the army. But it appears like there is some kind of conflict going on, and in fact Somalia is going or has been going through many civil wars over the years. Civil wars, this is when the people inside the country itself are divided against each other and they are fighting each other from among each other, that there is no external source or external source of conflict, or it's not another country fighting them. It's civil war is an internal conflict, meaning that the people from inside the country themselves, they are divided and they are fighting each other. In the past, Somalia was colonized by Britain. Remember that time when we talked about the colonization, the European colonization of Africa? Somalia was also one of the African countries that were colonized, and its European colonizer was Britain. So nowadays, due to all the civil wars and the past colonization and the other political problems like the government problems and the government division and so on, Somalia is suffering from severe poverty, to the point that the percentage of poverty or the percentage of people who are poor in Somalia is 73%. So 73% of the population or of Somali people are in fact living in poverty. So this makes Somalia one of the world's most poor nations, or the poorest nations of the world, and they are always suffering from problems, major problems like famines and lack of clean water, which causes the death of thousands and thousands of people each year. And when we say that there is a problem with poverty, you can also deduce that there would be a problem with education. When there's less poverty, there is more education, and the opposite is also true. So poverty makes it hard for people to pursue education. They try to focus more on making a living and trying to survive instead of educating themselves, specifically in a situation where the country is going through civil wars. Now, this concludes the main points that you need to know about Somalia. And what I want you to do right now is to pause this video, bring your resource pack and bring a pen, and flip to the page where it's the lesson exercises on Ethiopia and Somalia. But we are going to focus on Somalia only today. We are not going to do the lesson exercises about Ethiopia. We will do lesson exercises on Somalia. So bring your resource pack and pen. Now, what are the major problems of Somalia? I want you to listen carefully to this video and try and understand what is being presented to you right now. Why? Because I will not be giving the model answers to these questions yet. You will be given these model answers later, but for now it's important that you do them on your own. And what you need to do is that you will answer these questions in your resource pack and take a clear screenshot of your answers and send them to my email, and make sure that the title is Resource Pack Somalia Lesson or Lesson Somalia Resource Pack and so on. So make sure that the title explains what exactly this task is. What are the major problems of Somalia? Let's recap. We said one of the major problems is having civil wars, having governmental problems, and these civil wars and governmental problems and the past colonization, they led to severe poverty. So one of the major problems would be civil wars, colonization, governmental problems, which led to severe poverty. If you would like, pause the video whenever and take the time to answer and then get back to the video. Okay? Now, as a continuation to this answer, we said it caused severe poverty. What percentage? That 73% of the people in Somalia, they live in poverty, or that Somalia has a 73% poverty rate. If you want to rephrase it, you can also add Somalia is among the world's poorest nations, and one of the other problems that they suffer from is famines and the lack of clean water. Now, another big social problem is the lack of education for those people who are living in poverty. Okay? Though Somalia has a lot of natural resources, it is suffering from severe poverty. Explain. Now, it's the same kind of question here, but possibly you will need to explain what kind of natural resources Somalia has and why these natural resources are not making Somalia richer or more wealthy. You would explain that Somalia has untapped reserves of numerous natural resources and give an example of one or two of them, like natural gas and copper, for example. But the problem is that given that Somalia was colonized in the past, nowadays Somalia is suffering from civil wars and governmental problems, and these problems have caused severe poverty, which made Somalia a very poor nation, one of the poorest nations in the world. Question 3. To what extent the geographical location of Somalia is so important? So let's get back to where Somalia is located. We said it's located on the easternmost on the Horn of Africa. Why is its location important? Because it is located northward towards the Gulf of Aden, and the Gulf of Aden is a very important gulf. Gulf, by the way, guys, means Khalig. In Arabic, it's Al-Khalig. So it's located near the Gulf of Aden, and it's close to the Sub-Saharan Africa. It's located within the Sub-Saharan Africa, and it's close to Arabia, the countries of Arabia and Southwestern Asia. All right. Another way to tackle this question would be to say that basically, given this geographical location, the Somaliland, in fact, is full of natural resources, and you can, again, one more time, give one or two examples from this list here. Okay? Now it's your turn. Close your resource pack. We are done with the resource pack questions. Now we will move on to have a very quick recap of our last lesson, which was Ethiopia. Look at this map here and try and locate where Somalia is and where Ethiopia is. They are both highlighted, but which one is which? So definitely Somalia would be the one on the easternmost edge, and Ethiopia is the one neighboring Somalia from the west. So which flag belongs to which country? You are supposed to connect the flags. So the flag, the blue flag with a white star is the flag of Somalia, and the flag with green, yellow, red, and the star in the middle is the flag of Ethiopia. What is the capital city of each of these countries? So this is the flag of Somalia, and the capital city of Somalia is Mogadishu, and this is the flag of Ethiopia, and the capital city of Ethiopia is Addis Ababa. Dash dash dash, the capital city is the dash dash capital city in Africa at 2,400 meters. You are supposed to fill in the gaps. So what is the name of the capital city? We said it was of Ethiopia. We said it is Addis Ababa, and it is what capital city in Africa, given that it extends 2,400 meters high. So we say that it's the highest capital city in Africa. This is a main feature of Addis Ababa. Ethiopia is the second most something country in Africa, with a population of over 90 million people by 2015. So since we mentioned the population, then it's definitely the most populous or populated country in Africa. It is second to which country, which had a population of over 174 million people by 2013? What is the second? What is the most populated country of Africa? We said it last time. Nigeria. So Ethiopia is the second most populous country, and it's the second to Nigeria. Look at the pie chart. And we said that there is over how many languages that are being spoken in this country. And what is the language of instruction in the institutions of higher learning? Which language, which European language is the most language used in institutions of higher learning? What are also the most widely spoken local languages in Ethiopia? So there are over 80 languages that are being spoken in Ethiopia, and English is the language of instruction in the institutions of higher learning. And when we say institutions of higher learning, we mean universities, for example. The most widely spoken local languages are the Oromo, the Amharic, the Somali, and Tigrinya. Ethiopia fought against the for Africa, and it's one of the few countries that were not colonized. Though, which country occupied it for at least 5 years? What is the name of the European colonization of Africa? The name of the European colonization of Africa was the Scramble of Africa. And it's one of the few countries, Ethiopia was one of the few countries that were not colonized. However, the Italians, they actually occupied Ethiopia for at least 5 years. Now look at this map and use this visual representation that you have right here to spot which two countries were never or continued to be independent and free during the scramble for Africa. Well, you have Ethiopia and Liberia. These two countries are the two countries that were not colonized during the scramble for Africa. What kind of crop was discovered in Ethiopia, and when the shepherd discovered this crop, how did he discover it? When his goats ate the leaves and they became what? So actually it was coffee that was discovered in this country, and it was found specifically in Kaffa region. One day, a shepherd discovered the importance of this famous beverage when his goats ate the leaves of the coffee bean and they became restless. About 70% of Africa are found in this country. Look at the image. What can you see here? Mountains. So about 70% of the mountains of Africa can be found in Ethiopia. One of the interesting things about Ethiopia was their calendar. We said that the Ethiopian calendar has how many months? And we also said that it's 7.5 years ahead or behind the Gregorian calendar. When the Gregorian year is 2020, our year right now, which year is it in Ethiopian calendar? The Ethiopian calendar has 13 months and it's 7.5 years behind the Gregorian calendar, meaning that when the Gregorian year is 2020, the Ethiopian year is 2012. Now here you have a video. You're supposed to watch the video, skim through the video. You don't need to cover each and every small detail, but just try and get a clear image of how Somalia is like. Now regarding your homework, this is part of your homework, by the way, guys. Now regarding your homework itself, you are required to enroll into the Humanities Google Classroom. From now on, no homework shall be accepted unless it's submitted through the Humanities Google Classroom. How to enroll? You enter this code here, KFEO5L3, in order to submit your homework. How to do that? You will fill in the assignment, and the assignment is called Ethiopia and Somalia, and it's dated Thursday, 26 March. You will fill in the assignment, and in order to save the changes and to save your answers, you should refresh the page. Once you refresh the page, you can click on the word turn in that you will find at the top right corner of your assignment. All right? I hope you understood the lesson so far. Please make sure that when you are using Humanities Google Classroom that you use your own name as it appears on Moodle and not the name of either of your parents. All right? Hope you stay safe and sound, guys, and until our next class. See you.